The Emerald Knight, Chapter 16. Holy shit! The soldier's eyes grew wide, and he reached out to lay a hand on Rivian's shoulder, to direct his attention to where Clin stood, surreal in the morning mist. "Sir, look at that." Rivian followed the man's guidance, and took in the sight before him. Clin was standing a ways out from the camp, near where he had staked his horse. But now she was free, and he didn't hold the reins. Rather than running away, she stood calmly by his side, where he was staring at a small, wild bird perched on his forearm. Clin opened his mouth and made a sound almost exactly like birdsong, and the creature spoke back. The boy moved his head strangely, in soft, smooth motions, always tilted, always looking at the bird with only one eye, and it mirrored him. More of the creatures descended from the sky and landed by his feet, on his shoulders. One even alighted in his hair and began pecking at it. He made the sound again, and an echo went up from the small things, who hopped and flittered as if they had no fear of him. Rivian and his soldiers stood, transfixed at the sight, until Clin noticed them. His eyes grew wide and he startled, and in a flash of color the birds took flight and disappeared into the sunrise. He seemed embarrassed to be caught at whatever it was he was doing, looked from side to side, and jogged back to the campsite. "How?" the soldier asked, but Rivian held up a hand to stop him. "We'll move out as soon as we've broken down camp, sir," Rivian reported. "I was hoping you would join me for a private breakfast while my people work." Clin nodded and followed him to the burned-out husk of the last night's fire. He sat, leaning back on the log, apparently content, while Rivian unpacked provisions and took the sack he was offered with none of the resistance he had shown the night before. He unfolded it and began to nibble at the sweetbread within, with his legs crossed in front of him. "Why didn't you finish your training?" Rivian asked after a few moments of silence. Clin shrugged and he prodded. "I studied you before I took this mission. You're one of the best students the guardsmen have ever trained. There must be a reason." Clin sighed and broke the bread into smaller and smaller pieces instead of eating it. He shrugged again and averted his eyes, and sat in silence until it became so painful that he felt he had to answer. "I don't know," he finally admitted. "I put in a bunch of petitions, but no one wanted me. They were all rejected. I assume because—" He shrugged yet again. "You know, the rumors. I think people were afraid I would slit their throats while they slept." "I don't think you would," Rivian mused. Clin shrugged and looked at the cloth. He had broken the bread into the smallest pieces he could without crumbling it, so he popped one into his mouth and chewed slowly. "You're a bit old for it now," Rivian continued. Clin nodded in agreement. He had given up on his knighthood, his real knighthood, long ago, and didn't particularly want to talk about his failures, so he racked his brain for a new subject. Unfortunately, he felt that all of his interest would bore someone with Rivian's experience, and the seconds ticked away in awkward silence while he tried to force himself to swallow. His stomach had tightened again, and it was a chore. He could no longer really taste anything. He wished he had just shoved the whole piece into his mouth and been done with it before he started thinking and ruined it. "Clin," Rivian asked, and Clin had no idea what that was supposed to mean. There was a question there, but he couldn't understand what it was. He put another piece of bread on his tongue, and it tasted of nothing. "If you would be interested, upon our return, I would be willing to teach you anything you would like to know," he mused. "Though I believe your skills are exemplary, your leadership qualities leave a lot to be desired." "I know." Clin forced himself to swallow. "I'm sorry." He waited a few seconds as Rivian stared at him and added, "I don't know what the hell I'm doing." "It's a secret to everybody," Rivian said, leaning in conspiratorially. "But I don't either. Neither does Xandra. It's an open secret, Clin, that no one knows what the hell they're doing." Clin stared at him, trying to absorb this revelation. Rivian was so well put together and commanded his troop with such efficiency and poise that he was convinced the man was trying to placate him. He resented being treated like a child who needed the world to cater to his shortcomings, and scoffed. "No, really," Rivian explained. "No one knows any more than you do. The trick is convincing people to follow you anyway. Everyone is always confused and always frightened. No one goes into battle as a fearless, confident warrior. That simply isn't real. The illusion is what is important. The complete unreality of that act is what strikes fear in the heart of an enemy. He put a hand on Clint's shoulders and looked him steadily in the eye. There is no courage in doing that which is easy, he explained. A courageous man faces his fears. If you have no fear or doubt, you would never actually accomplish anything. When you face a foe, you are actually facing yourself. Clint looked away, and Rivian shook him until he looked back. Clint, he said in a voice that Clint didn't understand, because he hadn't heard the tone since his father had died. It's important to me that you understand that. Tell me that you understand. Clint sighed, shrugged, and felt the stern, fatherly gaze eat away at his mind. I'm not like you, he explained. Any of you, and you can all sense it. I'm not a real knight. I'm not even a real person. I'm a guy who picked up a sword and suddenly a bunch of stuff happened to me. That's how life works, boy, Rivian explained. A bunch of stuff happens to you, and the way you deal with it defines who you are. Clint struggled, trying to figure out how he reacted to things. He generally just did whatever he thought was expected of him, and that realization, for the first time, stung. He was used to thinking of himself as a good boy, as an obedient child, but now that he was forced to lead, he was coming to terms with the fact that the niche he had carved for himself would not carry him into adulthood. A child. Yes, Rivian replied, but he didn't sound angry. But not forever, and you need to make a decision about what sort of man you want to be. I want to be a knight, Clint replied almost instantly. I want to protect Xandra. If you want to be a personal bodyguard to the Queen, Rivian explained, you may have a head start because of your personal relationship, but the court will not take you seriously unless you prove yourself. You can't ride that sword forever. You have to learn how to lead an army, how to navigate the nobility, how to detect threats before she tells you about them, how to be constantly on guard, and this is important, you have to be crafty. I'm not smart, Clint admitted. With that attitude, Rivian's voice was stern, the court will continue to treat you like a meaningless figurehead. To conquer assassins and rebels and whatever else life throws at you, you have to be smarter than your foes. You have to be able to predict them, to stay ahead of them. Well, I guess I'm fucked then, Clint snarled and wrapped the crumbs he had made back up in the cloth. He made to stand, and Rivian pulled him back down with a stern, sit down. Clint did as he was told, but he was antsy and unhappy. He wanted to get moving. You're smarter than you think, Rivian told him. And watching a good soldier given to self-doubt weighs on my nerves. I refuse to let your skills go to waste. I will train you for the position you want. Good luck with that. Clem pulled away and stood. I'm ready to leave whenever you guys are.